I think it's really interesting if you consider that people are typically the least important expenditure in a security process. If, let's say, your company spends $50,000 this year on security, I would say $49,998 of it is going towards technology. New VPN servers or new firewalls or new proxies or new virus scanners, things like that. Those are great bits of technology, but they almost always leave out human security, human education, making users aware, making administrators aware of what security means and how to defend against it. Well, that's interesting because with ethical hacking, we're looking for the easiest way to compromise assets, the easiest way to break into a network, the easiest way to penetrate an environment. And if administrators are spending all this money on technical controls, encryption and VPN and all that kind of fun stuff, but they're spending no money on people, well, then people are probably going to be the weakest link, and they're going to be the ones that we can approach and hopefully compromise. Bringing strength against weakness really here means bringing our attack against folks that don't know that they're a security vulnerability and have not had any kind of controls implemented on them. Human nature is a bit of exploit here because people generally want to be helpful, they want to be kind. How often do you walk into a building where someone holds a door open for you or where the receptionist pops open the door for you and unlocks it, that kind of thing? Nobody really thinks, wow, that person that just walked by is an attacker. They think, wow, that person that just walked by had their hands full, or they had soup, or they were on the phone and very unhappy. Therefore, I should be a little bit courteous and a little respectful. That's a great human nature thing, but security-wise, that's a horrible compromise. And as an ethical hacker, it's a very, very easily exploitable vulnerability. People typically don't think they're a target. I hear constantly the no one would attack my system, or no one is interested in compromising my company, or no one would ever dream of just walking into my building or walking into my data center, so I'm not going to worry so much about it. And I have all these great security controls, or security isn't my problem, therefore I don't need to really think about it or worry about it. Those are great things for an ethical hacker. It means that people are letting their guard down, and it means that we're going to be able to conduct some exploits. In addition, kind of a thing that's happened over the last few years, there's a trend towards social networking, certainly with Facebook and Twitter, all that kind of stuff, Flickr and Picasa for pictures. Social networking and work computing have kind of blended together. And so people tend to think when they're at work that they're at home on the computer. When they're at home, they're at work on the computer. This stuff gets blended in, so they don't really consider, should I do this kind of thing on a computer? Should I not do this kind of thing on a computer at work? Is it okay to do this at home but not at work? People's minds simply have not wrapped around that yet. And another beautiful aspect of social engineering, and one that I really appreciate, is that if you ask someone to open a door for you or hold open a door or give you access to something, if you perform some type of social engineering attack, almost always there's no trace of the attack. If it's unsuccessful, the response might be, no, I can't let you in. I'm really sorry. You'll need to go back all the way to your car in the pouring cold rain because I live in Seattle. Okay, so 1 in 100 times that'll happen. If it happens, the response by me is, oh, darn, okay, and I walk out of the building. There's no trace of the attack. There's no one that's going to report to security, wow, somebody wanted to get in and I told him he had to go get his badge and he went and got his badge. Well, they didn't wait for me, and I certainly never went back or didn't go back at that point where that person was. So there's no trace of the attack ever happening. That's fantastic. In addition to that, based on human nature, no one wants to raise their hand and say, I was the way that this attack succeeded. I was the conduit for this attack. So when some type of successful attack takes place and administration and network security, police, maybe law enforcement are looking for evidence, they're looking for witnesses, no one wants to raise their hand and say, yes, I let that person into the building by accident. Was that wrong? Just doesn't happen. So people will avoid taking the blame. Again, great for an ethical hacker because there's virtually no trace. I've already briefly mentioned social engineering is bringing strength against weakness. It's bringing your security strength and your knowledge of penetration tests and your ability to manipulate people against their weakness. It's not so much that they're weak per se, it's that they don't think about security and they don't think about defending and they don't think that what they're doing is a compromise. So strength against weakness is the surest way to success here. And I can't stress enough that there's an exceptionally high rate of success across government, across private industry, across public sector stuff, across any kind of enterprise you can imagine, whether it's technology, pharmaceutical, healthcare, service industry, anything like that. It really is pretty universal that social engineering, with very, very few exceptions, is highly successful. More successful, certainly, than most technical forms of attack. However, it does often require you physically be close to manipulate, but that changes as well with all kinds of different technologies and approaches, as you'll see in some of the videos coming up. Social engineering can also be very stealthy and very simple. Keep it simple, keep it easy. You'll see in the videos that some of the social engineering attacks that I conduct are trivial in their engineering, and if you think about them, you'll probably realize how successful they'll be in your environment. And again, unlikely to be reported. As I mentioned previously, most targets of social engineering do not want to report, hey, I was stupid and I let somebody in the building, or hey, someone talked me out of my password and now they're attacking the network, and whoops, I'm real sorry about that. Would you please fire me and sue me for all the damages? Yeah, that doesn't really happen. Not so common. So that kind of attack just simply goes unreported. The only evidence typically is in the mind of the one person that got compromised. And as an ethical hacker, it's my responsibility to ensure that that doesn't happen in the future by reporting it properly. But again, getting down to the agreement that we've got in writing before any ethical hacking attack begins, you want to know, do you name people by name, or do you generalize? I asked 5 people for the password and 3 people gave it to me. Do you anonymize these things? Fred from sales gave me this information, or Jane from engineering provided access in this way or that way. You need to understand what your parameters are to understand how to report it. But certainly that kind of thing is going to come up. You are, as an ethical hacker, going to have to report success of social engineering attacks because you're going to be successful. If you attempt it, you're going to be successful at it. For social engineering methodologies, oftentimes it's as simple as identifying a mark, quote unquote, which is the target of your social engineering attack, footprinting them to make sure they are the people you want to attack or manipulate. They can give you the data or the access you want, and then actually conducting your social engineering attack without leaving a trace. So for example, if I wanted to understand how data disposal worked at a company, I would identify the person that is responsible for system decommissioning, maybe in the IT department, maybe in the facilities department. I would identify them either through calling reception and asking them just point blank, hey, who deals with getting rid of old computers? Or looking around on Facebook or Twitter for different people in different departments and starting to put together an idea of who does that. Comes from kind of early on in the footprinting process. Once I've got that person, once I understand either which department or which individual, I'm going to go ahead and make a phone call, perhaps a phone call without caller ID or with a spoofed caller ID, that, hey, I'd like to quote on this, I'd like to bid, I've got a new company that does great work at cheap prices, can you tell me what kind of needs you have? Usually what kind of needs they have will be exactly what they're doing today. Oh, well, our needs are we have about 10 hard drives a month that need to get disposed, and we need to do it this way and that way. They have to be picked up by an armed security guard, and we need a certificate that they're actually destroyed properly. And right now we use company XYZ and they charge us this much and they pick up every 3rd Thursday. Great. Thanks for all that information. I'll get you a quote immediately. Will I get them a quote? No. But I'm going to sure show up at the wrong time on the wrong day and pick up those hard drives. And will anyone want to report, hey, I gave the hard drives to somebody who looked official, but I don't know if he was? Or when the real company shows up, Are we going to say, or is that mark going to say, I gave the hard drives to the wrong person on the wrong day? Probably not. It'll probably be more along the lines of, oh, we don't have any hard drives to go this month. Great. Now I've essentially attacked without a trace. Some great examples of social engineering attacks. I've got 3 videos for you to watch, and these are all really interesting. There's the shoulder surfing attack, which is just like it sounds, just watching somebody over their shoulder. The found treasure, someone finding something and thinking that's pretty exciting. And a combination of a few different attacks, one of my favorites. It's a denial of service and reverse social engineering attack that I'll explain. First up, the shoulder surfing attack. Shoulder surfing is the concept of simply looking over someone's shoulder in a way that they don't see me. So just standing behind someone looking over the shoulder. And in this example, you're going to see